Okay, so I just ended left off where we were talking about pseudoscientific popular literature of the time and technological developments. All I really want to say on that um, is that it's only natural that just like now, you know, people have a hard time deciding what is really science and what is not science. And you know, an example I can think of is What the Bleep Do We Know? There's a film that tries to link a concept about love and physics. And it was popular with a lot of my friends, and I watched it, and I liked some of the concepts, but I thought it was very vague, and people were speaking as experts. I didn't know who they were. And I had my friend who's a physicist, and we watched this film, and he's he's very open-minded too, by the way. He's not just one to just be kind of blindly follow science, if you want to put it that way. But he said, this is wrong, what's going on, who are these people talking? And we end up finding out that it's linked to a woman named Jay-Z Knight, who is I could call her a cult leader, who claims that she channels like a 10,000-year-old Atlantean warrior and gives special spiritual knowledge, and it was a part of her foundation. And many of the people speaking were not qualified on the subject. Some were scientifically, but it came off very scientific, and it remains to be a popular film in my circle of friends and viewed as something serious. And we had years ago a gentleman come speak on a book he wrote called The Alphabet versus the Goddess, where he's a neurosurgeon. He is somebody who's in science and claims that he can link patriarchy and misogyny and male power against females through the act of writing. That was his theory. And it became very popular, and because of his authority as a neurosurgeon, it made him, you know, come off like he knew what he was talking about. I think that I would put him in the pseudoscience category. But see, that's the funny thing too, right? It's not always, I mean, some things are clear-cut pseudoscience and other things are debatable, and certain characters get marginalized. Mesmer was one such character that's talked about here, and the very term mesmerize, which we use in the English language as well, just like sadism, comes from a character at this time, as you saw in the book. So again, what I just kind of find interesting is how many things, even from the vocabulary that we use, is linked to things coming from this time period. But going now, switching gears and talking about enlightened absolutism. So we remember the concept of absolute, being an absolute monarch. And, you know, most of the philosophers and the Enlightenment thinkers, they were more, I think that they were more a part of the aristocratic elite regime, certainly, than they were of the masses. And many of them really wanted to see their ideas, or ideas that they were seeing floating around, to be enacted by somebody who could make them happen, like an enlightened monarch, right? And so there was an influence that many of them were able to have on these various monarchies to talk, thinking about the values of religious toleration, compulsory education, to reform the legal systems, and looking at things like serfdom as backwards. And so you had these different regimes approach things, taking in some of these ideas. I'm not going to actually go into this in the detail. I want you to read about it in the textbook. Right now, as a survey course, I want you to get the essence of what was happening, since we're covering so much. I don't want to bog you down with trying to memorize Frederick the Great, Maria Theresa, and Joseph II. But they're significant to the story, right? Because you do see this actually making an influence. And what I'd like you to encourage you to do is, there's this documentary I saw on Catherine the Great of Russia, And I don't want to bog you down with that either, but I just want to say that I think if you find this topic interesting and you want to look at some of the enlightened absolute rulers, and you maybe have took an interest in Russia, for example, and you looked at Ivan the Terrible and Peter the Great, Catherine of Russia is truly an interesting woman. And she was a part of a political system, so she was not without blood on her hands and scandal, but she would get unfairly criticized for things that she did, which men could do freely. So here we look at her and say, oh my gosh, she had several lovers, like as if there wasn't a monarch who had several lovers. She basically was able to do a lot of things by maneuvering herself, even getting her husband removed. But you can see her as a very interesting person, and I think very much a part of the Western tradition, and very much influenced by Enlightenment period. So I encourage you to look her up and do more of that on your own. Now, where we're going to transition is from all this into revolution and the creation of a new world order. It's fair to say that the majority of these thinkers would have not viewed themselves as revolutionaries per se. I think they would have saw themselves as progressives. But in fact, their ideas are going to directly influence politics. And as the text shows, the French Revolution is going to give credit to Rousseau, okay? Fairly or unfairly. And this is what's interesting about political ideas. I think that we always want to be careful. It's always difficult to say how much we can associate with what happens politically and what a person writes and people who are co-opted by those regimes. I mean, would Karl Marx have agreed with Pol Pot in the Khmer Rouge or Stalin or anything done in his name? We don't know. Did they all do it wrong? And was there a better way to do his ideas? Those are things we'll never know, right? Okay. What would have Rousseau thought about this revolution? And essentially, you have, excuse me, got a little bit brain. Okay, so, that's something you just want to keep in mind. I was thinking about Nietzsche. Sorry, that's what I was going to say. The Nazi Party basically brought in the German philosopher, and he became like the quintessential Nazi philosopher. But it was his sister who basically pawned him off as fitting into German fascism. And now, he's been somewhat rehabilitated and kind of extracted away from that Nazi legacy. So you see this time and time again pop up, this debate of whether or not certain writers should be associated with the regimes or movements that do things in their name. I guess Jesus and Christianity and Muhammad and Islam, you can say that about a lot of things, right? Okay, moving on. Now, we're going into the French Revolution. I took a whole class on the French Revolution. I find it very interesting. There's a video I'm going to have you mainly watch instead of me giving you all lectures, mainly because I think it'll break up the monotony. It's a good documentary. It's a History Channel. I normally don't like History Channel documentaries, but I like this one. And I think that you'll find it interesting. And then I'm going to have you watch another short clip from the crash course that covers the Napoleonic aspect of it. And I think if you read the text, you watch this documentary, and you watch that crash course, you really have a strong hold on this. I mean, what got me interested in the French Revolution initially was I was doing Middle East history type subjects, and I would find the French Revolution pop up in weird places, the topic of it. So I had this global Jewish writers class, and I read this book called The Pillar of Salt. It's a semi-autobiography of a Tunisian Jewish man named Albert Memmi. Okay, he's mainly famous for a book called Colonizer and a Colonized. But he's telling the story of his life, and he's getting under a French occupation. And he's some of the background on here you're not going to get, but I just want to read this one section here on 262. He talks about Marat, his teacher, a Frenchman who was sent from France to teach to the Tunisians. And he says, he became irritated, fussed through the essay, and last found what made him angry enough to grade it so low. Ben Saman, his friend, had written of the admirable Robespierre and the age of enlightenment, when the one was branded in our class as the most bloodthirsty of tyrants and the other as the darkest period in the history of France. So here was this Frenchman speaking negative of the French Revolution and of enlightenment. And then he basically talked about this teacher becoming angry and grading low anybody who thought favorable of the French Revolution. And the French Revolution was influencing and inspiring these young intellects to think, whoa, we can overthrow, colonialist regimes or whatever. Now, what's interesting is that my professor said that for the most part, France looks positively on the revolution, but royalists, people left over from those old times, that conservative tradition, see it negative, and they couldn't get jobs, and many of them were disgruntled teachers going to the colonies, speaking against the revolution. But at the same time, these people were getting exposed to it, and it was also inspiring them to rebel against their colonial masters. It was like a double-edged sword. And so the French Revolution is going to be something that is actually an influence on Karl Marx, and the Bolsheviks and the Russian Revolution are going to see this as a major influence on their actions, and they're going to want to kind of relive the French Revolution, but through what they considered a rise of the proletariat against the bourgeoisie. So they saw, according to Marx, the monarchy gets overthrown with the rise of the bourgeoisie, and the communists, the Bolsheviks, saw that the next phase of revolution that was inherent in the natural world would be the proletariat to overthrow the bourgeoisie and come to power as a last phase of natural development in the world, of historical development. So we'll go into that in more detail as we go later on, but you'll see this. So take good notes on the French Revolution video, then the last one, and then I want you to contact me if there's any questions you want to elaborate upon, okay? I think you'll enjoy both of those, and I think that they'll cover quite nicely in context to also what the book said. So still do the reading, watch that, and I guarantee you, when you really understand the French Revolution, you're going to understand so many things that when it comes to revolution in the modern world, and looking at the debate about violence and justification against the lack of justice and all sorts of things. It's just a very important one to understand, okay? Can't stress that enough. All right, so we'll move on, and I will put those on for the last chapter of this section of this week.